this is going on all over the place, okay? But most especially here. Let me give you 3 reasons why Patriots are becoming the center now of the new politics. The first is a massive demographic shift that's been going on now for some time, but it's just been actually radically exacerbated as a result of this whole COVID stuff. Today, what we're seeing is a reversal of about 150, 200-year trend where populations all over the world were amassing around cities. So at the beginning of the 19th century, 90% of the United States was rural. At the end of the 19th century, 90% was urban. Okay, so that's where you got a lot of these problems that happened where there was a poverty and all that. Socialism always, the socialist theorists always went to the cities. Look, there's people, it's like refugees coming, migrants coming to the border, and there's nowhere for them to stay, and they all get just congealed and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's kind of what happened in the urban world, and it took several decades to be able to create infrastructure and assimilate and get this functioning city. City life is the political center of the modern age. We see it in the media. Think about all your great media outlets, right? Great meaning big, right? So New York Times, LA Times, right? Chicago Tribune, San Francisco Chronicle, Washington Post, right? CNN building in Atlanta, NBC in the Rockefeller Center. So everything is in the urban area. And that's only, again, increased in intensity with globalization. Because what globalization did is it imposed what's called a global division of labor on all Western nations. Now, what that basically is, it shipped manufacturing jobs and industry out of our nation overseas, to places like China and Mexico, where it was really, really cheap. And then all the capital that came from the incredible margins that corporations were able to get from that, all that capital came into the cities. And so all the cities, well, parts of them at least, got gentrified. And they became almost impossible to live in unless you had a 6-figure income. So if you recall, in Paris, they had those yellow vest uprisings. In that process, rural folk have found themselves highly unemployed. Our communities turned into rust belts. And it was the same in France. And so these workers who were living about 2 hours outside of Paris, they had no work where they were living. So they were starting to commute to Paris to work into the city. They couldn't live in the city because the city got gentrified. Because there was too much, the property values all went up. So there's no work where they live, and they can't live where there's work. So they were commuting some an hour, 2 hours at a time. Then President Macron, in the name of green environmental activism, slapped a gasoline tax on them. And they blew up. They absolutely blew. They actually forced them to reverse the tax. He got rid of it. They absolutely blew up and protested and demonstrated for a year and a half straight until the whole COVID stuff started coming in. So that's the globalist world order. And so the political subject was the city. So cosmopolitan values became the values of our political class. Cosmopolitan, metropolitan, urban values became the values of our political class. That's what united all the political classes around the world. That world is dying. We're actually going through a process known as deurbanization now. It's been going on for about 10 years. It's actually happening at alarmingly fast rates in Japan, where my wife is from, where the real estate now in the rural areas is exploding because people don't want to be in the cities. They had different reasons for it. I don't know if you remember, they had a massive tsunami there about, it almost be like 10 years ago. And they were so horrified by how bad life was in the cities after the tsunami. A lot of them just decided to move off and actually go and buy old grandparents' properties and that sort of thing. It's the new thing now, actually, a really fun YouTube channels that are popping up all over Japan is how to restore old houses, old farmhouses out in the country. Well, we're seeing the same thing here. LA, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, they're all losing population every single year. We've never seen anything like it before. Baltimore is under 600,000 population for the first time in a century. People are leaving. Now, ironically, Philly has dodged that bullet. Philly still seems to be growing a little bit. But most cities, except for the cities in the South, in red states, most cities are falling apart. And what we're finding is people are moving to rural areas and in the exurbs, and they're not bringing their blue politics with them. Now, this is a general thing. Okay? It's a general thing. We have some studies, particularly in Texas. So what we found in Texas, which was very, very interesting, if only Texans voted in the last Senate election, Beto O'Rourke would be the senator by 2 points. Native Texans voted for O'Rourke by 2 points back in 2018. It was the California transplants, if you can believe it. It was the California transplants that voted overwhelmingly for Ted Cruz. It was a fascinating study. The transplants, they're called leftugees. The transplants left California and they literally said, I never want to see that mess again. And they found a home. So what we're finding is that this demographic reorientation is now it's dislocating the centralized political subject from the urban area and then moving it now to the ex-urban area. And what kind of area is that? What kind of values do you see in Lancaster? Are they cosmopolitan, urbanized, metro values? Or are they values such as faith, family, freedom, tradition, custom, culture, hard work, thrift, Protestant work ethic? In other words, values that are eternal, that don't change every single day on TikTok. Right? But historically, that's what tradition is. Tradition is just a manifestation of eternity. And tradition is what keeps us grounded in what matters in life. And that's why tradition is every bit as important today as it was years ago. So that's the first thing that's happening. We're seeing politics realign around exurbia, and urban life is becoming increasingly irrelevant. But the second thing we're seeing here is there's a political realignment around education. Well, maybe I should put this in a different way. Because keep in mind, I was a prof for 20 years. We're seeing the partisanization of college grads and non-college grads. College grads historically tended to, like in the 70s, 80s, they tended to actually be more Republican. You know, they try to keep taxes low and most kind of a libertarian sort of thing. Ironically, from our vantage point, non-college grads tended to be Democrat. Iowa's about 80% non-college grad. They voted for Dukakis. They were one of the most reliably blue states in the Union. Now, this is going back to the FDR days, right? The New Deal, and where the Republican Party tended to be associated with, bankers and special interests and everything like that, kind of like neocons today and all. And so they saw the farm-based Democrat as a way of countering that kind of influence over their lives. What we're finding is those two groups are switching. So what we're finding is that the college grad has got radically, what's the word you want? Insane. Let's just call it indoctrinated, okay? The college grads got radically indoctrinated, and the college grads were finding, for example, in Brexit surveys, again, this is going on all over the world. So if you remember Brexit, when Britain voted to leave the EU, the vast majority of college grads voted to stay. They love the EU. They love the bullies in Brussels, right? Liberals don't care what you do as long as it's mandatory, right? I owe that to Charles Crownhammer. I didn't make that up. So now they're becoming Democrats, overwhelmingly Democrat. Okay, Youngkin lost college grads. Notice I didn't say college educated. College grads. What's going on with non-college grads? I'm going to read you a headline from a paper not too far away from you, the Philadelphia Inquirer. They had an commie bastards. Here's the title of the article: "The New Political Driver's Seat." And here's the byline. Now you're going to have to excuse them because they're a bunch of liberal elites. "The voting divide between white women with college degrees and their less educated peers became a Grand Canyon in the Virginia governor's race." Now again, this is not, if you didn't go to college, I promise you were not less educated. If anything, you are more educated. As Malcolm Muggeridge once said, our colleges are educating people into imbecility. I go back to the whole Rachel Levine thing, but I move on. You want to take a guess? How many, according to the exit polls, how many women without college degrees vote? What the percentage was that voted for Youngkin? 8%. Oh, very good, 75%. Now again, remember, this was a group that generally was Democrat. And this is what's happening now. They're voting Republican en masse. It started in 2016. That's what took Hillary by surprise. She never dreamed that was going to happen. If Hillary had gotten the same amount of black votes that Obama got, she still would have lost, because she lost whites without college degrees so much. Remember, you had nearly 200 counties in Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, right? Almost Minnesota too. It's almost a clean sweep. It's known as the blue wall for the Democrats. One of the most reliable walls out there, votes for them. They, almost those 200 counties, for the first time since 1984, since Walter Mondale's fiasco, voted for a Republican. They voted Democrat. Every single election voted Republican for Trump, some by a 20-point margin. And then you want to know something? How many know what the percentage is of our population that's college grad? Okay, good. You guys are good. Good. See, I'm the latest. You guys, you're not too bad for knuckle draggers. Very good. So 35%, which means non-college grads make up a pretty big voting bloc.
Yes, you do.
And that's what you saw happen last week. 75% of them voted for the winner. And according to this article, this Philadelphia Inquirer article, hardly right-wing propaganda, as long as voters without college degrees, and they focus primarily on women without college degrees, as long as they vote 75% one way, they're the new political subject. They're in the driver's seat. It's simply a numbers game. You can't beat it. It's a numbers game. You can't beat a 75% block like that makes up 65% of the voting population. Do you get the sense that last week was just the beginning?
Yes.
Last one. So your first one is your demographic change, right? Then you have your college versus non-college grad partization. And then third, you have your demographic revolution. And we talked about this the last time I was here. Well, it was the first time. When all is said and done, secular liberals have stopped having kids. Conservative patriots are having more than ever. What did someone say? Good. That was easy.
I was wondering if I could get the CD again. Cammy biscuit.
So, yes, it is good. They've stopped having kids. You see, there's a problem when you don't reproduce. Just ask the Shakers. It doesn't really shake out for you very well. So, in rural America, back in 2009, the fertility discrepancy between rural America and cosmopolitan America was about 5%. Okay, obviously in favor of rural America. Today, it's increased 300%. It's at 15%. So rural America seems to understand something that cosmopolitan America doesn't quite understand, with all of its fun alternative lifestyle values. Family's the foundation of civilization.
Yes.
And if you play around with the family, it might do okay for you for maybe 20 years, but that's about it. That's as long as your party's gonna last. Traditionalists, our party tends to last 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. Their party, 20 years. And then we talked about it as well, I think, my first time with you guys. Conservative evangelicals have a 30% fertility advantage over their secular counterparts. And if you don't know the way it works, if you've got a population evenly split, so 50% conservative evangelical, 50% secular liberal, if the conservative evangelical has a 50% fertility advantage, in one generation, 20 years, that 50-50 population becomes 60-40. In 2 generations, 75-25. And in 10 generations, 200 years, 99-1.
Yes.
And we're already seeing it. You live in an area where a group doubles every 20 years, and it ain't because of conversions. And God bless them. By the way, you know they're voting like overwhelmingly Republican. Conservative Mormons, who vote about 99% Republican, they grow by 40% every 10 years. So when you combine, does anyone want to take a guess how many Amish they believe, demographers believe, are going to, if they could, these population growth trends have been going on for 150 years. There's no sign they're stopping. Okay? You want to take a guess how many Amish they think are going to be around at the end of the century? It's going to blow your brain. I don't know where they're going to put all the horses and buggies. 300 million. 300 million. Same with conservative Mormons. Conservative Mormons are going to be around 300 million. Same with conservative evangelicals, conservative Catholics. Demographers are estimating that the United States alone will have 1 billion patriots within decades. How can anyone despair? How can anyone despair? I know the one thing everyone says, well, they don't need to have kids. They've got ours. They're going to make ours woke. And I mean, I hear it all the time, right? Professors will say that. Professors say, we don't need to have children. We got yours. We'll get them in college. Well, yeah, they've done a grisly job with some of our kids, sure, but the data's in. And what we're finding is that the more conservative the family, the more the child retains the conservatism into adulthood. The Amish are proof. The conservative Mormons are proof. The conservative evangelicals are proof. There's no way around. I mean, the Amish ain't doubling because, Rumspringer claims 90% of their kids. All right? They stay, the more conservative, the more they retain the faith, and the more conservative, the more kids. So, it looks like we're at the beginning of an amazing adventure. So, strap in. Get ready. You know it's going to be hard. You know the other side, the old world, the legacy world, has all the levers of cultural power. You know that, just like they did in the Soviet Union. Okay? Ironically, it's Eastern Europe and Russia that are the most conservative populations in Europe right now. Communism is gone and dead. It's moved over west. Putin actually said that. He had a speech the other day saying, you know, when I hear you woke people talk, it kind of reminds me of the Leninism I learned at school. And they want to rethink this stuff. It's not going to turn out too good for you guys. So it's not a straight line. There's going to be lots of problems and bumps along the way, but make no mistake, the world is moving in our direction. Yes. And you are at the center of it. All right, I think I have some time for some cues, some questions. Yeah. Okay.